What is up, y'all? Corwin Gilliams here coming at you with another video. Listen, go ahead, like, share, and subscribe. If you don't know what I talk about here is I talk about a lot of things, but relative to this conversation, I use current events, I use cultural events, I use real life situations in the form of movies, music, stories, analogies, whatever it is that I can use to communicate to you and to get you to understand, the message or the theme or the lesson. That's what I'm going to do, right? So I coach, right? I coach people to so I do a lot of things, right? But primarily what I love to do, what I'm passionate about is encouraging people and showing people in real life and in the virtual world how they can become the best version of themselves. And on my journey to transformation, I've acquired, some skills, some revelation. I've acquired wisdom, knowledge, understanding, insight, etc., etc. And so today we're gonna talk about. So I went to see the Michael Jackson movie, right? It's been on for a couple weeks now or more, and I had no plans to go see that. It wasn't something that I was like, yeah, I'm going to go see this movie, right? But it just so happened that I'm in a season now where I have a lot of downtime to really rest and to really do more quote unquote fun stuff, right? More leisure stuff. Okay, I'm not necessarily a movie person. You know, when I was a kid, I used to love to go to the movies, but as an adult, going to the movies is not really something that I was doing. And most importantly, most relevant to me, I'm someone I could go to the movies by myself, and have no problems like I did with the Michael Jackson movie and other movies that I've been watching recently. I'll go to the movies by myself. I've always been like that. I remember when I was, what was I, like 14, 15. I remember how I went to the movie, to the movies by myself. And, they, it was weird to a lot of people. It was weird. It was like I was supposed to go with friends or go with a girlfriend or, just to have someone there, with me to go to the movies. And I've always been someone, they say like a loner. I'm very careful with the words that I use, but I've always been someone who have always been comfortable doing things by myself. And a lot of it has had to do with like trauma and just how I grew up. But I believe foundationally, it's really, I take that back. You know, a lot of narratives would try to put it out there that, someone who likes being alone, that there's unresolved trauma, that there's issues. But now that I think about it, God gave me that personality and that strength to be independent, to have a mind of my own, to think for myself. And unfortunately, the places that I grew up, the areas that I grew up, people didn't necessarily want to do the things that I wanted to do. And I didn't have the guardianship to discern that they would need or should put me in certain environments that would complement my personality or complement my interests. So a lot of the times when you grow up in the hood or when you grow up in environments that don't necessarily align with who God created you to be, you find yourself doing things alone. You find yourself being alone a lot because one of the things that God, when you really tapped in, when you're really a child of God, when you really, really, before you even come to the revelation as to God and purpose and being chosen, you already know that you have certain qualities and certain attributes about yourself that makes you stand out. You stick out like a sore thumb. And so even though we may not have the language as kids to define that, how we experience that misfit environment through is by being bullied, is by being made to feel weird, right? Is by being ostracized, is by being abandoned, right? Is by being like ostracized, right? And so that can take manifestations in different ways, okay? So many of us, we have been already thickened or hardened when it comes to the opinions of people. Now, with that being said, many of us have gone through a stage of people pleasing because, again, when you don't have the tools to overcome, the things that we go through, you kind of like learn on the job. And some of us, it takes us a while for us to really, for some people never get the wisdom, never get the tools, never get the revelation and the insight that they need to overcome the mindset of people pleasing, overcome the behavior of wanting to prove people wrong, right? Uh, the behavior of wanting to do things to prove to people that you are not who they think you are, right? And all of that is energy, all of that is focus, time, and bandwidth that you should be using to do the things that you want to do in the context of your blueprint, your God given blueprint. So I've gone through years of just, being lost, right? Years of not knowing what it is that I want to do with my life, knowing that I was made for something big, knowing that I was created for something amazing, but just never having the support, never having the guidance around me to discern, okay, Corwin needs, my name is Corwin. That's what Corwin L. Gilliams. Never having the guidance to discern Corwin needs to be in this environment. Oh, I discern that Corwin is a creative. Corwin is an intellectual. Corwin is someone who he is athletic, but he's not really into football. He's not into basketball. So what other sports can we get Corwin into as a man, as a male, that will stimulate and cultivate his athletic side? Because I believe all men need to have some type of physical activity, physical, community that cultivates the physical part of their biology, right? So for me, I remember when I was in the fourth grade. Was it fourth grade? Yeah, I think it was the fourth or the fifth grade. I had a teacher tell me that when I turned 18, that I should start lifting weights, that I should, start getting into fitness. And interestingly, when he said it, I kind of took it with a grain of salt. But basically, he was saying, basically, because of how my form is, that that genetically I was already made to have. I was already genetically blessed, so that if I were to get into, let's say, bodybuilding, that I would kind of have like a head start, right? And so I want you to think about this when it comes to people who naturally have gifts and talents, right? And for example, you may have a basketballer who is 6'5", 6'6", right? Automatically, you're gonna say, okay, you know what? This guy or this woman has the height to play basketball. Less, they may not have the skill, they may not have the technical knowledge on how to play basketball, but they have the gift of height. So now let's get them into the sport and see how that goes. When it comes to football, it may be someone has the build, right? Typically, when you talk about football players, you typically, right, this is not always the case, but you typically see someone who has a solid build, or and you're like, okay, this person would be great for football. Now, that was one of the suggestions that was made for me when I had came back to the States, living in Grenada for a while. I came back to the States, and one of the reasons that they put me in the high school that I was in was because of my frame. But I had some reservations. I had some. There was a lot of things going on mentally that made me not attracted to the sport that is football, because I felt like at the time, I felt like a lot of people, they they I just had a negative connotation for for football, because I'm gonna tell you why. Because I didn't like that was automatically what they saw me as. I felt like my intellectualism, my creativity needed to be celebrated just as much, right? And I felt like when it came to the black community, they only see black men or black boys as athletes. And it's, it's not, I think it's amazing to be an athlete, right? Athleticism is a gift as well. But for me, I just wanted to be a different representation when it came to blackness, when it came to, the opportunities and the privileges that I knew I had access to, and as a result can be a representation to other young black men. Like, you don't have to go this route, you can do something else. So that was always my mindset. However, I didn't have the wisdom and I didn't have the perspective to see, okay, football, whether you make it or not, it can be a gateway and a doorway into opportunities that better align with, what you want to do, right? So again, sometimes we learn, right, in life, and as a result of our learning, God gives us another opportunity to do it over again. And so I say that to say, beautiful people, that I went to see the Michael Jackson movie, right? Uh, one of the parts of the movie, there was multiple parts, but and very good acting, by the way. They all actors did a great job. One of the part of the movie that I wanted to talk about in this video is the part where I'm having a slurry in bed. Huh. One of the parts in the movie that I want to talk about is the part where Michael Jackson started to come into the revelation of his identity and his power and his gift. And he wanted to break free from Joseph. Joseph was his father. Joseph is his father in the in real life and in the movie. The character Joseph, the actor who played Joseph, very good actor. A very good actor. He really played that intimidating father figure that has been that Joe Jackson in real life. That has always been the narrative about the Joe Jackson. His intimidating presence and how he moved. And so the actor definitely portrayed that very well in a movie. Like I said, they all did very well. But anyways, so in the movie, there's a part where Michael begins to be awakened. He's awakened to his not only his potential, but he understands his purpose, right? He understands that he is here as a gift to bring light and love and joy and happiness into the lives of people. And he's realizing this. And as a result, he's beginning to break away from his family. He's beginning to carve out his own identity. His father is trying to hold on to him. His father is trying to get him to do more concerts and bring the family along, because ultimately I discern, without knowing the complete details and the facts, I discern that the contracts that Joe Jackson had conjured, it involved him, it involved his financial welfare. So now that Michael was growing up and he's becoming a man and he is being aware of his gifts and his talents, and he's now beginning to break free, Joe Jackson is also becoming aware that the moment Michael is completely broken free from any ties that Joe Jackson is involved in, then that becomes a damper in his financial prosperity or lack thereof. And so we see how Joe Jackson tries to convince Michael to continue touring with the brothers and to stay part of the family. He uses the language of no one else understands you, we do, da 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 da. But Michael is becoming stronger and stronger in his gifts because he's seeing the impact in real time that he's having in the lives of his fans and the people who love and support him, whether they do it genuinely or not. We see how he is using people to, because he's still afraid of Joe Jackson, he's using people to, he's using people to, like the lawyers and like, the business managers and stuff like that. He's using them to cut the, umbilical cord, to cut the connection that him and Joe has. And he's not able to do it to Joe directly because he's afraid of Joseph, right? He's afraid of his father. And so ultimately we know how the story goes. Michael Jackson becomes completely free, right? In a sense that he has his own identity. He's doing what he wants to do. But I believe that throughout his life there was always residual effects in regards to his relationship with his father Joseph, right? I don't think that ever goes away in anyone's life, especially as someone like Michael who had a lot of purity. You saw that the movie was able to depict the purity that many of us believed Michael had. That some may agree, some may not agree, but he had a lot of purity that was misunderstood. And so oftentimes when you are pure, right, or when people perceive you to be pure or naive, that they think they can take advantage of you. And so there comes a point where I believe God because they were Jehovah's Witnesses, whether you are religious or not. Jehovah is Jehovah, right? Jesus, Jehovah, Jesus, God, Emmanuel, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Nisi, Yahweh. God is God. And so when God gives us gifts, especially as children, it is the responsibility of our parents or the people who God put in our lives as adults to steward that gift and to make sure that at the end of the day, God gets the glory. But what happens is that a lot of the times when money gets involved and fame and influence and all of these things, people want to now take control and try to control and manipulate the gifts and talents within people. The music industry is known for that. And so I believe there comes a point, as you maintain your purity, that God begins to have a more evident. God is always prevalent. He's always around. But I believe in the lives of individuals, when you're continuing to do the right thing and you're wanting to live right, no matter how many times you may mess up, if your heart is wanting to do right, then God begins to now make his presence more prevalent and more relevant in your life so that you're able to discern. You're able to have the courage and the strength to make the right decisions. You're able to see the enemies that has been hidden in plain sight. And so in many ways, Joseph Jackson is coming off as an enemy. He's coming off as a Goliath that Michael eventually slayed, but Michael was afraid of in the beginning stages of him wanting to be independent or be solo. And so we see in the movie many attempts from Joe in the acts of intimidation, silent treatment, stern stares, uh, manipulative conversations, poking at the insecurities that Michael had, or the things that he perceived to be insecure in the mind of Michael, right? I'm gonna just say it like that because we see that Michael, even though there were things about him that was quote unquote weird, it didn't stop him from being himself. And I do believe that one of the ways that he was able to endure as long as he did was the drugs. The drugs, I believe, helped him to endure a lot of the pain and the hurt and the betrayal and the negativity that came about him being himself. And a lot of the times, as you grow and you learn and you educate yourself, you begin to understand people, you understand why people do the things that they do, and you have your stance tends to be less judgmental and more understanding. And unfortunately, people, a lot of the things that I know is a result, school didn't teach me. It's a result of me wanting to learn and inquire knowledge and get knowledge. And of course, the grace of God opening my mind and enlarging my mind to want to know more, right? But a lot of people don't know. A lot of people will not know. And a lot of people will not do the work that needs to be done to know more. And so these are the people that you have to deal with when you have crossed over, right? When you have crossed over into your promised land, you have entered into a mindset and into a realm that is of love, light, peace, and prosperity. And you have to mo- at times, whether momentarily or for a season or at times, have to deal with people who are still in a low place, still in a dark place, still in a place where they're trying to bring you back down, right? And the key here is to keep going, right? It's to keep going, keep getting stronger, keep seeking, keep knocking, keep asking God to bring you out of situations, to give you the tools, the wherewithal, the ability to fight your battles, to ask God to illuminate the gifts and the talents within you. Ask God to expose the enemies around you. You know what I'm saying? That do not need to be around you, that you don't know of. And so in the movie with Michael, eventually, obviously, he was able to completely break free from Joseph Jackson and the Jackson Five, and we know Michael as Michael is today. Nevertheless, the movie was giving us an insider, right? And I believe it was a genuine insider about his struggles, about the inner battles and the conflicts that he had to deal with, that his stardom, right, or that his presence on stage did not depict or did not reflect. Because when he was on stage, he was a star. He turned on. He was an artist. He gave the world what they wanted, right? But behind the scenes, we see how, as with many artists, as with many bright stars, as with many people who we know in this life who are famous and distinguished, that they've had many trials. They have had many dark times from childhood, right? But they did not allow that to stop them. They did not allow that to make them evil people. And ultimately, that's what darkness wants to happen to you. Darkness wants you to turn to the other side. And so you have people like the Michaels and the Whitneys who may have struggled with darkness internally. You see, a lot of the times, if darkness cannot get you to be wicked to other people, it'll get you to be wicked towards yourself. And so we see that in the form of abuse, drug abuse, abuse of self in whatever way. I've found a lot of beautiful people who don't want to hurt people, but they don't know how to deal with darkness. In that sense, is that they'll internalize it and they will use that darkness to in the form of drug use, in the form of just exploiting their bodies in whichever way. And so the next challenge, the first challenge is to not let the world make you evil, as in you want it to be, wicked and demonic and just be low level, right, with other people and how you interact with the world. The next step, if you're not doing that, is to not do that towards yourself. And so you'll find desires like lust in the form of even food, right, overeating, or lust in the form of always wanting to have sex with all different types of people, or lust in the form of spending your money for things that don't really serve you, right? Lust in the form of just even material possessions, you know what I'm saying? Buying and buying and buying, and it's like you're trying to fill an empty void. Okay. And so what I've also learned in just being a social, someone who self-identifies as a social experimenter or socialist, in that I study people and I see, I observe people and I see how things operate. And also considering my journey and my self-development, what I've learned is that you need to have something that transcends time, transcends money, transcends relationships, transcends the seasons, transcends emotions and feelings. And point blank, period, that is God. So a lot of the times you'll find that many people who have become stars, they grew up in a church, they've had an awareness of God through religion, and for whatever reasons, they've come into an understanding about God according to their own likeness. But God is God. And we read the Holy Bible, no matter what religion you're from. You read the Holy Bible and you understand that God is God, and that you need to have an active relationship with God to overcome all the trials and the tribulations in the world, because Jesus says, I've overcome the world, so can you. And let God be true and every man a liar. So what I've found is that a lot of the times when you're giving your gifts and you're giving your talents to the glory of men and not to the glory of God, you're going to find yourself in a mess. And a lot of the times, the higher you go, the more you need God. The more exposure you have in the world, the more you're going to need more God. As the song goes, I need a little more Jesus. The more Jesus you're going to need, the more strength and courage and confidence and discernment you're going to need so that you can navigate, the different levels, the different realms, right, that exist. As they say, new levels, new devils. And so when you talk about spiritual kingdoms, the kingdoms that we cannot see, these kingdoms are ruled and governed by spiritual principalities and evil forces in the heavenly realms. And I want you to think of it in the realms of an organization. You have leads, you have supervisors, you have store management, and you get into corporate. You have, entry level management. You have execs. And then different. You have different sections or sectors of management. It doesn't mean that they hide on each other. They're on the same level, but they manage different sectors of the organization. So you have the CFOs, the CMOs, and it's like these are all managerial positions and they all hold authority. And so I say that to say, when you're dealing with, living in this world and you're becoming and you're rising to the top of your mountain, you're dealing with different levels of authority in terms of the adversary, in terms of quote unquote new levels, new devils, whose attempt is to get you to turn away from God, to neglect, to turn away, to not become, to not flourish, to not embody, the man or woman that God has called you to be. And so we see many stars who have reached levels of success, but world renowned success, undeniable success. And then we see that they pass away or they die because of drug abuse or because of something that they did, right? Something that they did to themselves, right? I want y'all to pay attention to that because that is very powerful. That is very powerful and revelatory in this message. You got to understand that at the end of the day, you may have a strong personality and a strong will to set your boundaries when it comes to the people that you are on the same level with now, or that's in your realm right now. But have you ever considered that maybe you are afraid of the next level because you don't know if you're going to be as successful when it comes to discerning, when it comes to setting your boundaries, when it comes to, being your authentic self? And I'm here to tell you, listen, if you ain't moving, if you ain't moving backwards, you're standing still. If you ain't moving forward, you ain't progressing. And we need to continue to have more faith in God and continue to believe that God, is going to bring us through, and to not allow complacency and the success that we had last season to keep us from moving forward, right? We got to get back up again. We got to keep pressing forward. We got to keep moving forward. We got to keep believing. We got to keep wanting. We got to keep dreaming big. We got to glorify God and reveal to God, or should I say not reveal to God, but reveal again to the principalities and evil forces in the heavenly realms who transgressed against God, who have done everything that they can to stop the plans of God from manifesting in the lives of God's creation. We got to show them, like Jesus did, like Joseph did, right? We got to show them again that God is God, okay? And that his plans shall come to fruition, and that what he says shall come to pass. Heaven and earth may pass away, but God's word shall remain. And you are a manifestation of God's word. I am a manifestation of God's word that was sent for a time such as this. And there are entities, there are forces, however they come, however they show up, that is intended to try to keep you small, to keep you in bondage, or to bring you back into bondage. Glory to God. But you are going to rise. You are going to perform at your highest of heights. You're going to be your authentic embodiment of self according to the blueprint that God has for you. And you're going to shine and let your light shine. And that was another thing that they said in the movie several times. Let your light shine, right? There are people around you who's trying to dim your light. They don't want your light to shine. So what they try to do is to throw dirt on your name. They lie on you. They plot and they scheme. And the hope is that it gets you angry. This is what I was talking about, where if the enemy can't get your heart to turn against people, he'll try to get you to turn against yourself in the form of abuse towards yourself. Okay. And so you gotta, when you start seeing that happen, you need more God. It's real simple. The recipe is simple. Okay. You need a little bit more Jesus. You need a little bit more God. You need to go on a fast. You need to spend more time with God. That's it. That's it. It's not it's not brain surgery. It is not anything that you need to do that's just out of your reach. The presence of God is all about you. It's all around you. Okay. The presence of God is through his word digitally, and so many ways you can access God's word. The presence of God is in you. It is taking time to meditate, taking time to breathe, and to take deep breaths, and you know what I'm saying? Just letting God know that you are not letting the things of this world take the place that he should have. And that is essentially what happens. When we allow people, places, and things to take the place of God, we end up in a mess. We end up in some situations that is to our detriment, right? So the Michael Jackson movie, Michael, it was a beautiful thing to see through storytelling how he was able to slowly but surely detach himself from his father, from his family in that sense. And even though he was afraid, right, you saw that there was trepidation and fear. You saw that he still did it, and that God was sending the right people. God was sending from his driver, right, his personal driver, from his attorney that he chose. God was sending the right people to help Michael Jackson navigate out of the situation that he no longer wanted to be in. And that's it, y'all. God is sending the right people, the right situations. He's leading you in the way that you should go so that you can experience the full freedom that is available to you as a child of God, as a chosen one who was born in this world to bring about joy, delight, healing, prosperity, to let your light shine, as Jesus said. And the Goliaths in your life that has been holding you back, the people, places, and things that has been holding you back, they are no longer going to be able to do that, because God is giving you the strength. He's giving you the eyes to see what he sees and the ears to hear what he hears, so that you can go about your Father's business and be the servant, the child, the beloved, the son, the masterpiece that he created you to be. And no one will be able to stop it. There may be attempts to bring you back down. There may be attempts to make you feel small, as the enemy does. But these are failed attempts. These are attempts that has already been prophesied to fail, right? To fail, okay? Because no weapon formed against you shall prosper as a child of God. All things work out for the good of those who love God and are called according to his perfect promises. And you, my friend, are in the perfect promises of God. You, my friend, have chosen to be about your Father's business. You, my friend, have done away with the things of this world, because you realize there's no other God, there's no other place that you would rather be than in the presence of God. And not in a religious sense, but in a real sense, in a real life sense, where you're walking and talking with God, like Adam and Eve walked and talked with God, where the presence of God is evident in your life, because you shine. No matter how much darkness try to keep you down, you shine bright. You're glowing. Your aura is bright. You're shining. Everything about you is just saying celebrity, and you have $0 in your bank account. That is a sure sign, a sure testament that you are on your way to breakthrough, and that the promises of God, the spiritual blessing that has been stored up for you in Christ Jesus, is about to be unleashed into your life, beautiful people. So I would definitely suggest you go watching the Michael Jackson movie if you have not seen it. It is definitely a movie that if you're spiritually deep as I am, you would definitely get the spiritual knowledge and the wisdom, because people go to movies for different reasons, right? You get what you get what you deserve, and you get what you're looking for when you do anything. But in this case, if you're someone who enjoys the spiritual revelations and insight that God gives you in movies and shows and stuff, then this will definitely be a movie that you want to go see. And don't be afraid to go alone. It's okay. You're not weird. It's normal. All right. You're just strong. You're just a strong person, and you don't need validation, and you don't need any type of, affirmations from people. Your affirmation and the glory that you get and the justification that you get comes from God. And you love that, and allow God to bring the right people in your life, right? To be the true people in your life, the right people in your life that's going to support you, even if it's for a season, that's going to support you and help you grow in your relationship with God, and not have you subtract from it. And sometimes you may be in someone, God will send people in your life for you to teach them about God. You may be the strongest in the group for a season. That's okay too, right? God has given you that promotion and that leadership to be able to influence the lives of others who need your insight, who need your strength, who need, you know what I'm saying, encouragement, who need to be reminded of the goodness of God. That's normal too. But also keep in mind that God also has people who is, as they say, iron sharpens iron, and people who you can learn from. You just gotta receive what they're saying, right? They're like your mentors. So you'll know what season you're in for each scenario, because why? You are connected to God, and He's going to tell you what's going on in every season, in every way. All right. With that being said, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Corwin L. Gilliams, and I hope you enjoyed your time with me. Talk to y'all later.